Hello and welcome back to Transcontinental Overload, my second episode in the cross-cultural couples season. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome a very special guest to my podcast today. In fact, if I hadn't met her, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be a podcast. You can probably hear the smile on my face and my voice. It is, of course, the wonderful Sundae Schneider-Bean. Sundae is an intercultural strategist and coach, and also an author and podcaster. She grew up in North Dakota in the US, then met her future husband while backpacking in Southeast Asia, and moved to his home country of Switzerland for a few years, before they relocated to Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and then to Pretoria, South Africa, where they live now with their 2 sons. She'll talk about all of those different locations and stages in her life during our chat. And if you're curious to find out more about her, I highly recommend her podcast, Expat Happy Hour. I stumbled across Sundae's podcast while out on a dog walk, and I remember it literally stopped me in my tracks. I was walking at full pelt. You have to know that my dog doesn't do slow walking, and so we were both kind of power walking along and came to such an abrupt halt that I really yanked hard on my dog's lead, and he looked at me like, what the hell? But yeah, that's how it happened. I just remember coming to a halt and my chest was hurting. I had to take a deep breath. I just had that incredible sensation in my body, and I thought, okay, I need to get in touch with this woman. And I did. And yeah, I had a Skype chat with Sundae and then signed up for a coaching program with her. I had reached a point in my life when nothing made sense anymore. I had just moved back to the States. I felt absolutely lost, stuck, without any plan or vision of how to get my life back, come up with something that I really wanted to do. And actually just even myself, I kind of felt like I'd lost myself along the way. All those moves and just nothing made sense anymore. And well, you'll see for yourself how full of power and enthusiasm Sundae is. And she just really coaxed all this stuff out of me. I remember her pushing, like trying to find out what it was I wanted to do. And I was like, well, I don't know, I like podcasts. And well, 6 months later, I published my first episode. And let me tell you, the podcast isn't the only thing that came out of that time with Sundae. During the course of that program, I met a number of other expats and my network really grew from there. And yeah, it was absolutely life-changing. So if you're an expat or maybe a repat, so someone who's lived somewhere and then relocated back to their home country after years of living abroad, or maybe you've lived in many different places and have no clue where you belong, and you feel stuck or unhappy, or you just don't know how to get where you want to be. Or maybe you're someone struggling with the challenges of a cross-cultural relationship. Then please take a look at Sundae's work. I've put all the links in the show notes. She just has such a wonderful energy and is so infectious. And obviously, she has had a lot of experience herself, and she's really turned that into her profession. And you can tell. But as I said, you'll see, or rather listen, for yourself. I'm so excited that you get to meet her in this episode. So let's get to it. Let's hear Sundae's story. Yeah, welcome, Sundae. I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
I am overjoyed to be here, and I mean that with my whole heart.
You and I have had quite a few conversations in the past, and so I know it's hard for us to stop talking. But I mean, you know a lot of me and my story, but I don't know that much about you. So I'm thrilled that I get to ask all the questions today.
Hopefully I won't be too nervous about the questions that you're going to ask me.
Well, now you know how I felt.
Exactly.
So Sundae, please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, and how you got to where you are now. And obviously we want to hear about how you found your husband along the way too.
Well, I have to say, if it weren't for having met my Swiss husband in Vietnam in 1999, I might not be here today doing what I do. So his involvement in my life is actually a really important piece of who I am today. So often I tell this story way too long if I start from the beginning, so I'll go backwards. Currently, I'm in South Africa. I have a podcast and a company that serves expats. And in order to do that, I have been serving expats for a decade. I got a master's degree in intercultural communication and coaching certifications because of the raw experience I did have in 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004 with binational marriage going, wow, I have no models for this. Like I grew up in Williston, North Dakota. My father's a farmer. My mom's a housewife, lived on the prairies. I had no idea because we didn't have a ton of ethnic diversity in my town, didn't have a ton of cross-cultural experience in my regular life. So like being literally married to a country really brought me outside of my comfort zone. Not that I was uncomfortable. It was I was outside of my zone of what I knew and what was familiar, right?
Which is what a lot of people experience. I think it's if you could kind of take yourself back 25 years, would you have thought that you'd be where you are now?
I was always hungry for diversity. I know that I wanted to see the world. I know I wanted to have very diverse groups of friends, right? But honestly, if I was really honest with myself, I kind of thought maybe I'd be like in Minneapolis in a multiple ethnic community.
City.
Like I had no idea I would be literally around the world. So it took me off guard. And that's the story. Like grew up in a very homogenous community, wasn't exposed to that, but ended up following that hunger. And that brought me to Southeast Asia, met this Swiss guy in Vietnam 2 weeks before I was going back. Long story short, he ends up calling me from a phone booth, I think in, I don't even know, Jakarta, and I'm in Minneapolis. And he's like, hey, I'd like to see you again. And I say, hop on the next plane. And he literally hopped on like a plane. And he was there in 4 days, right? I'd only known him for a few weeks in Southeast Asia. And my friends were like, how long have you known this guy?
So you were just traveling in Southeast Asia?
Exactly. Exactly. And it was one of those, sort of love at first sight situations. And I ended up moving to Switzerland in 2000 after having visited him. He visited me. And then I moved there and we got legally married 8 weeks later.
That's amazing. But so were you in the middle of college or what was
I had graduated university, had studied abroad in Spain, had a wonderful job with an accounting firm or a consulting firm, Accenture, was getting really well paid. I had everything I'd actually worked for.
Yeah.
And then I just gave it all up and packed literally one suitcase and moved.
Amazing.
With really no idea what was ahead of me. But I was 23 or 22, I think. So it was, how that is.
In love and full of energy and naivety.
Oxytocin.
Yes, oxytocin. And just that thought of, yes, I'm doing this. This is amazing. And kind of fueled by your own sense of adventure. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. So then it got real fast.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're
talking
about. Absolutely. So was it, just to kind of wind back slightly, was it for him, was it not an option to come to the US, or was that just, how was that decision made, apart from all the oxytocin?
Right. Exactly.
There has to be that kind of like, okay, does he come, we want to be together. Does he come live with me? Do I go there?
Right. So I think it was a very pragmatic decision. My US community was spread out because that's often how US families and friends do. We're all over the nation. And in Switzerland, he's from Bern. So literally 90% of all of the people are like within a very, very small radius of each other.
Switzerland isn't very big, is it? So even if you're in a different town, it's,
Oh, no, the ones far away were 56 minutes away by train.
Yeah.
That was too far, right? And so everybody was literally in the same town. And I was really ready to see more of the world and have a cultural adventure, continue to learn new languages. I just lived in Spain. I loved Europe. So I was the one who was really ready to do something. To be honest, I was also even though I loved the company that I worked for in terms of the people, the managers, the high level professionalism, it was not in alignment with like sort of the deeper part of my soul that needed to do different work. Right. So I think it was also a way to make a shift there.
But that's amazing to have that sense in your early 20s. I think it feels like you really trusted your gut.
It was insane.
So then you land in Bern with your one suitcase and then what? And then what happened?
I'm just cracking up because literally my suitcase was like this embroidered flower pattern thing from like 1990 or whatever. So bad. And then what? So what I went there on were false promises. Right? The people that knew me and liked me, friends I got to know of them, all said, "Oh my God, Sundae, you have an amazing background. You're so accomplished. You'll get a job right away. It won't be a problem." Right? And I got there and it was hard.
Yeah.
And I went hoping that what everybody said was true. And it wasn't like they were lying. They just were Swiss and were never a foreigner who didn't speak the local language and didn't have a local education, right? They saw a Swiss equivalent of my accomplishments.
Yeah.
But weren't translating on what that would mean for me.
Because they just didn't know. And this is so often the issue. So it's almost like they give you a false sense of confidence because you feel, oh yeah, they all say this is amazing. You speak the languages, you do all this kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, they're not the employers. They're not experienced in international companies or anything like that. Yeah.
No. And I mean, I'm sure I've done the same thing many times, when I was younger, shot my mouth off because I cared about someone and because I thought they were super talented, but had no real idea of the context, right? Yeah. Like, sure, move to LA and become an actress. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, you have talent. You would be amazing. You should go and try.
Yeah. Right. But you're the one who has to pay the rent in LA. And so I went and it was, I think honestly, there were two situations in my life that were harder than anybody probably would get. How shall I say it? These situations were much harder than people probably think. And people would guess I've had harder things happen in my life, but it's not true. The hardest two things were when I first left my home state to a huge city and went to university mid-semester, and I was completely lonely and knew no one. So that was a very raw experience. So when I got to Switzerland, I'd already known that pain of loneliness and trying to find community. And that was in my local culture. That was in my local language, right? That was we all have this shared university experience. So when I got to a different culture, different language, people on totally other operating waves, I was like, whoa, this is going to be hard. And thankfully the relationship was good because that was always good, right? The other stuff was hard, but that was thankfully good.
But it's a huge pressure on a new relationship to kind of, if you only have your partner really to rely on, and for as a confidence boost, and you don't know anything else, that's big, especially early on in a relationship.
And I came from a small town, so everybody knew me. I had community. I would, even the first university I went to, I'd walk into a party and I would know half the people there. Like, I felt confident and competent. And then I just got smashed in this situation where I felt completely incompetent and lost my confidence. And the thing that was really interesting for him when I moved there is he met me backpacking throughout Southeast Asia. He saw me hitchhiking in Laos. Sorry, mom and dad, I don't really want you to know that, but he saw me, they do listen to my podcast. I found that out later. I'm like, oh crap. So they saw me hitchhiking in Southeast Asia and that confidence and trying to order things and navigate cultural things that, we'd never done before. And then all of a sudden I was this totally different person in Switzerland, where I'm asking him to like make my gynecologist appointment. Right?
Yes. That's such a far extreme. And very often in those, when you meet in a completely different situation, and you met outside of both your countries, so it's almost like you got a version of each other that wasn't necessarily reflecting like day-to-day reality. And if it must have been the same kind of for you, and meeting him backpacking, and then he's back in Switzerland. And I mean, Switzerland is notoriously a very non-backpacky culture.
It's about Ordnung, right? It's all the order, right? Not this, freestyle,
very traditional. And so, yeah. So how was that? I mean, how was that for you? You land there, and like you said, you're completely out of your comfort zone, and you feel like you've lost all your confidence. And then you, all of a sudden you wake up to, oh, I'm married to a Swiss guy. I mean, that must have been such a shock on so many levels.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it was the shock of I'm married to a Swiss guy. It was more like I live halfway across the world from my family and my loved ones. And I mean, this was 1999, 2000. This is for people who are younger than me. This was, you have one computer, it's in the back of the office, and you go on it, you log on.
Oh yeah.
Right. And you spend like 45 minutes checking an email, right? It's not, we weren't connected like we were. We would do telephone calls. They were expensive. Flights weren't that affordable, that sort of thing. So the hardest part for me, I think, was not having a job right away. And my husband and I this is probably one of our first cultural differences. I mean, there were many, but one of the core ones was he didn't understand how hard that was for me to not have something to do.
Yeah.
And not have an identity or like a status. I went from like top consulting firm, or before I was a dancer, or then I was a university student. Like I always had, my identity was very wrapped
up. You were
up
part of that. And all of a sudden you're the outsider who's trying to find her place. Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know, like, I felt like I lost something, and he's like, come on, Sundae, you're a daughter, you're a mother, you're a friend, you're all these things. That hasn't changed. And I was like, yeah, but like, and that's very US culture, right? You invest so much of your identity and who you are in what you do. And that was like a huge slap in the face when that happened. And that was hard for him to understand, I think. And I was open to hearing that, but it wasn't embodied. My whole body wanted to have like an identity and financial independence and that sort of thing. I had savings, but
still, you gave up so much, and obviously for the right reasons, and to be with him and to be, to start this new life. But that everything put together, the lack of independence and all that kind of thing, I think that's very hard to understand also for maybe someone who hasn't had that experience.
Well, I mean, the perfect example is I remember sitting on our hardwood floor in the apartment in the middle of Lengastrasse in Bern. And we got legally married, and then we had our wedding about a year later in the US. And so we were booking the flights to the US for the wedding. And we were talking about it. What should my last name be now that we're going to have our wedding? Should we change it? What should we do? And all of that. And at the time I was like, I was sitting on the floor, like cross-legged with all the paperwork in front of me. And I just looked at him. I'm like, honey, I have given up my language, my community, my country, like everything. Can I please just keep my last name? Like, I wasn't asking permission. I was saying, I need to hold on to this. And I didn't legally change my last name until after we'd been married for 7 years. And when I got my Swiss passport, we made sure that all the new passports had Schneider-Bean on it. And the reason why I was ready then was because I also knew this was a binational life and identity. And now I also knew that if I were to be in Switzerland and try to keep my last name, they would just give me his last name anyway. Right. So I knew I would lose it. So with children, I was like, I at least want us to have a shared last name. So then I decided to hyphenate it.
Yeah.
It's all about identity, right? Like it's
yes.
It's all connected to identity.
So at what point, because I one of the things, and I'm going to link to that as well, that I've heard a few people talk about is the letter you wrote. The letter every international couple needs to read.
Yep.
Is that what kickstarted some of the future endeavors? Or at what point did you write that letter?
So I wrote that letter. It was 2000, maybe 14 or 15. I normally, just for context, I spent a lot of time writing, right? But this time I wrote it in like 25 minutes. I'd had a glass of wine. I was sitting on my bed and I just got inspired. And I basically downloaded all of the emotions I felt from 10 years earlier, right? I wrote the letter I wish I could have articulated when I was in the hardest part. And actually, when I say that to you, my throat is closing up. I can feel like tears wanting to well
those emotions. Yeah. And your body will remember them. But that's the thing with writing. Sometimes you have to have been through it and come out the other end in order to actually put them to paper, because I always admire people who can write in the moment and be, and you can do that with some things, I guess. But something like that is, but that's why your body will access those emotions.
Totally. And I just whipped it out. I spoke it into my phone. It was done. I typed it up, sent it, and it went nuts. Like it's been in French, Spanish, Arabic, like all kinds, Korean. And a lot of people said that when they read it, they cried or their partners cried. And I knew that I just tapped into something that was very universal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that was, I mean, obviously you said that like 10 years down the line, where were you at that point? Because you didn't stay in Switzerland, right? So how long were you there? And you learned Swiss German as well.
Yep.
I mean,
a lot happened, right?
Yeah.
So I got over the first 4.5 years. I said I had a love-hate relationship with Switzerland. And what we did is I was the migrant, the love pat, right? But then I got my master's degree in the US and my husband came with me. And this is really important. This was a hard patch for us because he was going through all of these things about moving away, saying goodbye to friends and family. And then he would tell me about it. And I would say, yeah, of course, I know how that feels. And he goes, you do? And I was like, where were you for 4.5 years? Like, of course I didn't do that, but that's what I wanted to say. Like, of course, did you not see it? However, while I was there doing that, he was going through a really hard time. He had to do the same thing, start over professionally, work too much, et cetera, et cetera. I was also not seeing everything he went through. And I should know better because I did it. Right. So
but at that point you were back in your home country, so you can't see all the things that are strange to others in the same way.
I was just preoccupied with getting my master's degree. I was working 18 hours a day. I put blinders on. And to be honest, part of me might've been like, hey, I've already gone through this. It's your turn.
Yeah.
Right. And so he went through that. So I've gone over there for him. He's coming over there for me. He's had the lead assignment. I've had the lead assignment, that sort of thing. And then we went back to Switzerland and everything became what I'd always worked for. Right. I got the job, my dream job. I was coaching in German. I had a very secure salary. It was great. That was exactly everything I had worked for. And the day I got my dream job, I hung up the phone with my future boss and I wanted to cry, but not tears of joy, like sobbing grief, because it was like I had carried that on my back for so long.
and you
right.
got to
And
that
I
point.
went into like this little mini
yeah.
depression that weekend. It was the weirdest thing. And I tried to explain to my husband, like, I just recognized what I had carried on my back.
Yeah.
So we've done that. But then in 2013, we moved to West Africa. We moved to Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. So we've been to his place. We've been to my place. And now we were in a third place.
Mm-hmm. Was that for his job?
Yeah. Yep. Which again, this is, then I had to recreate myself professionally. Take what I was doing in corporate. And that's when I started my own company, 2013. Really grateful I did that, because now I can't imagine anything else. But at the time, and let's just be honest, the first few years until I could actually replace my corporate salary was hard. And I'm like, here I am again, working so hard to reinvent myself, and no guarantees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but thankfully, because I had done it before, I knew I could do it. I didn't know how long it would take.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I really, really like being in a neutral third location with my partner.
Isn't it fun? Yes, I agree.
It's like, it's okay where I put the dishes in the sink, right? Like, because there's a lot of ways you can do that, in this case.
Completely. There are so many advantages, disadvantages too, because you end up with the families, like you have to deal with double location anxiety, where you just like, oh my God, where do we go for Christmas? Do we go there or there? Exactly. That kind of thing. But this pales, I think, in comparison to just being on neutral ground when it comes to even just the coming home in the evening and having a rant about people.
Yeah.
In,
or discovering a culture together.
Oh, and that absolutely, where you can just let rip, or you can be like, wow, this is so amazing. And the other one is not like, yeah, it's always been like that. So it's absolutely, there's nothing that compares to that, I think. But yes, the experience, and like you said, you'd experienced this before, being new and having to reinvent yourself. And as hard as it is, and as hard as, and all the emotions that coming back in your body, and you feel it, that sense of, oh no, here we go again. But then that, I think, as you do this, as you keep doing this, that gets easier in some ways.
Because I know I got this. Right.
And then you can support each other through it, especially if he's done it before too. So that's amazing. So you're in Burkina Faso, and you had your children by that point too, right?
We took a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old to Burkina Faso, which, I mean, we were in the safest country on the planet, basically. And then we went to a malaria risk area. We ended up having all kinds of things happen there that we didn't anticipate. We maybe knew it could be a thing. So that was actually a really wonderful experience to go through together, because we learned a lot about it, and we learned how to do that together.
Did you notice a difference maybe in approaching things? You being the American and him being the Swiss guy, do you feel like you approached that whole experience differently?
Well, that's hard, because by that time I think I was pretty Swissified. Like, I moved there when I was 23.
Yeah.
And that was a dozen years later of having acculturated, in Europe. Then we moved to West Africa. So there was a lot of that. I think the cultural differences were more evident right at the beginning. And that was something I have learned only recently. I don't want to say recently, but I'm learning more and more deeply as time goes on. We've been married for 20 years. There were things in hindsight that I was pretty sure was cultural. And actually it's not. It's personality, it's attachment style, it's family culture, it's all of that, right? And I'm an interculturalist, right? So everything is cultural. That's what I thought. And the more I learn, the more I grow, the more I'm like, you got to be a little careful about what you attribute to culture and whatnot, because psychology is complex, right?
Very much.
Family culture is complex and all of that. So that's been really interesting. We actually responded very differently in emergency situations in Burkina initially. His job also had to do with security. So it's very much a professional approach, with risk level and numbers. And it's also the exactness of the Swiss culture, I think, too, that comes out, like what's the likelihood and all of that. And I was probably operating from an emotional level, like, whoa, never been here before. Protect the babies, it was like more like the rabid tiger. And he taught me a really big lesson. Our first kind of crisis in Burkina, he said, Sundae, I was basically calling everybody that seemed to have a status that should know more than me, right? They're the director of this, or they're the whatever of that. And he's like, Sundae, stop calling people. He's like, we need to make this decision. Nobody has information that is going to change this. Nobody knows, right? No one can predict the future. So we need to align as a family and make a call. And I think my prefrontal cortex was like, shut down, because I was just the all amygdala, at that point. And, but I heard that message. We did that. And then, so any other time something like a crisis has come up, I've been much more willing to go inward in our family to make that call than looking outward.
Yeah. That's amazing advice, actually. Yeah. And for him to recognize that too, and recognize your kind of first instant, like, I need to, someone. And I think, I, and a little bit like you, I don't like to kind of culturally stereotype people too much, but it's a very American thing. You call someone to fix things. It's, I observe this so much. And since I've lived here, the willingness to outsource everything you possibly can, to hire people for everything, is a very American thing that I hadn't come across so much in Europe. Yeah, really,
everything's so expensive. I can't afford it in Switzerland. And I also wonder if it's a hardship post thing, because when you're in a hardship post, for people who don't live like rotational expat lives, is like a post where the level of security is challenging, or the level of political instability, or whatever it might be, or the infrastructure. And I've lived in a couple different places that have varied on that level, but you do rely on people. You need people, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And it's even that first, you get your children registered in school and they ask you for an emergency contact, and you think, I don't know anyone here. And then you have to reach out and find the next best person. And you think, like,
you've been there for 3 days,
and you think, oh, there was this one woman I met, or my neighbor who introduced herself. She seemed nice. She could be my emergency contact. And
you can be responsible for my child's life.
Yeah, those are the situations you don't ever kind of think about, and that happens when you move to a third country. And then it's interesting also, I think, to see how you build your network, like not just as a family, but each individual. You look at your kids and how they're different characters, how one of them makes friends like that, and the other one doesn't. It takes time, or you feel like your husband is out with his work people and making connections and gets invited here and there, and you think, oh, or the other way around.
Right.
And so that's a really interesting experience, I think, as a couple.
I actually did a podcast about that, where the danger is that you end up feeling like you're living in different countries because your experience is so different. Like in Burkina, my husband led a Burkina Bay team in French and drove in erratic traffic there and back. I was working in my office, which was attached to the home, in English and sometimes German all day, and didn't have that same cultural experience. So I was starving for French and Burkina Bay experience on the weekend. And he was like, oh, I've done that all week. So you do live in different countries, so to speak. Or the one who is the accompanying partner is at the market negotiating in Chinese all day, while the other person's in air conditioning and it smells exactly like their home country because they use the same soap, right? Like, it's very different.
That's so funny. And then after Burkina came South Africa. Is that
South Africa?
Is that right?
And that was not planned. That happened unexpectedly. We had to again make a judgment call. because there were some terrorist attacks in Burkina where we decided it's better for our family to be split during this time, then sort of hope for the best in Burkina based on our values and what we wanted, right? And so I ended up solo parenting the boys in Switzerland while he finished his assignment in Burkina. And then this opportunity came up in South Africa pretty much out of the blue. And we had to decide really fast whether we were ready to do that.
But I guess at that point you had your business was a portable business, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that probably made the decision also easier for you to say, I can work from anywhere.
Absolutely.
And then you parented the boys in Switzerland while he was still in Africa. How was that? How did that feel going back to Switzerland? Obviously at that point that was the easier solution, or more made more sense rather than going to the US with them.
Right.
But how was that while he was still in Africa and you were in Switzerland, surrounded by his family?
Right. It was, that move was so abrupt. Like we had to make the decision and left within 10 days.
What if there's a real danger, like terrorist upsurge and that kind of, I mean, I can't even imagine what that must have been.
So it was hard. I didn't want to leave either. Like I loved my life there, and I cried my eyes out on the way to the airport. Like I didn't want to leave, but I knew is what we needed to do. And I didn't want to rip my kids away from their friends. I didn't want to put them in a school for a semester. It was hard, but we did it and it was the right thing. There was a sense of relief because I knew the culture, I knew the language. I had a network of people if I really needed it that I could have support. At the same time, we were in an international school system. We had to have temporary housing. There was a lot of unknowns, but also because this is what I do, it's like an assignment. I'm like, okay, so how do we do abrupt transitions? And I literally took notes during this whole time and captured highlights, lowlights, strategies, processes. And that's like my trick to create some distance from it and not be like, poor me. It's whenever something is hard, it really helps me go, if it's hard for me, and I actually have so many professional tools at my fingertips, imagine how it is for other people. So it really does help me stay humble and close to people's pain because of that. It was tempting to stay. I have to be really honest. I'd been there for maybe 5 months and we hadn't yet gotten the next assignment. And we did talk about it. What will we do? And there was a moment there where I'm like, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I could stay here because I have really close relationships there. And I felt very supported by his family and our friends. So that was interesting. I didn't expect that of myself. Right. Where I'm like, sure, let's just do this now. I do think that it was challenging if I'm really honest and transparent about what I would maybe do differently, is because I don't like to use the word trauma because there are people who have real trauma, right? But I'm going to say it was kind of a traumatic experience. It was an abrupt, hard, emotional experience. And because of having my business and getting those boys in, I just hit the ground running. And I didn't give myself permission or space or time to just literally fall apart, not even for 3 days. Right?
Yeah, I absolutely get that.
Yeah. So I think in hindsight, like if I were to now coach a client on this, right, I would say, hey, please create space for yourself, and it would have been no problem. Like all my clients would have understood, like it would have been not an issue. Right. But it was this probably fight or flight. And I might've just stayed in flight mode, like boom, boom, boom. Let's go. And I have a high capacity for resilience. And I've had this conversation with my husband as well. Is that always healthy to be super resilient, right? Like, is there some benefit in completely falling apart so that you can evaluate what pieces you want to pick up again
and reassess the situation from a different viewpoint?
Yeah. Or like even just let go of everything you've been carrying. So you could ask yourself, how much do I want to pick back up again? So those are some new questions that I have about resilience.
Yeah. And it's sometimes it's just that sense of, I can't afford to do this. I have to get, you just don't at the time maybe also realize that you need it, or it's there somewhere, that emotional, the baggage and the outburst, and you are so afraid of it. And you know that if I just keep myself busy and I keep running, everything works fine. And I'll just get over whatever it was. And actually, as we all know, now that sometimes the grieving process has to just happen. The ugly has to come out in order to. But I can only, I mean, imagine, and then your husband probably seeing you only just a few times during that time, and you don't want to fall apart in front of him.
Right. And what are you going to do? You see each other for 3 days, and then what are you going to do? Right. There was one time I sent him a message, and this was probably towards the end. And I sent him a message and I said, I'm really tired. Like really tired. And I felt something different in my body. And I talked to my aunt about it, and she's a shiatsu therapist. And she's like, oh, Sundae, that sounds like your kidneys are depleted, or maybe your adrenals are fatigued. You should check that out. And it was like, I listened to my body and I was like, ooh, careful. And so immediately I was like, okay, I'm going to clear my schedule. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to get lavender tea. I'm going to go to bed earlier. Like there was a message in my body.
Did you go to see a doctor?
I did. And so this is what I was doing then. And then when because this is near the end of the time in Switzerland, then when I got to South Africa, I ended up seeing an integrative specialist. And she's like, honey, your adrenals are like super low. Like, how come you're this happy and productive? Like, she didn't understand. Like, I don't get it. She's like, your strategies are too good. But she was like, your body, like your physical body is depleted.
Yeah.
And that was a real wake up call for me. Like, oh, okay.
It actually shows up somewhere.
Right. And exactly, it shows up somewhere. And one of my friends, she says, the truth will always find you. Right. And so that's the truth that my body was telling me was, you need to change things, and it needs to change in significant ways.
But it sounds like your relationship throughout the whole time was very mutually supportive and very, there was a lot of understanding. And so that, I guess, is also what keeps you from completely falling apart in situations like that.
Right. And totally. And just a little tip for anybody who's thinking about making an assignment change, or you're going to be the lead assignment and your partner is going to come with. One thing my husband always said to me that I appreciated was, Sundae, if you're not in this 100%, I'm going to say no. He's like, I don't care if I get offered the best city that I really want to go to. If you are not in support of this 100%, let's say no. Yeah. And it really set a tone of, he's smart because he knows we know what will happen when you're not in 100%, like resentment, and it just comes out and you pay for it over and over again. Right. So that happens with so many people.
It's so hard to know that though. And because I feel like my husband, if he were listening to this now, he'd be like, yes, I wanted you said you were in 100%, but then I realized you actually weren't. You thought you were, but you weren't. So I think it's really, sometimes it's easier to know if you've been through an experience, like a cross country move where you have been in that, and that 100% is that's not easy to get to, like in yourself.
Listen, that's the difference between knowing and wisdom, right? Like we know parenting is hard, and then you get to be a parent and you're like, whoa. I had no idea, right? Like,
what have I signed up for?
Harder and for
yes, absolutely. I was in this 100%, but I'm not so sure now.
Right? Like that's just wisdom. You can't blame anybody for not getting it right all the time, right? Like that's just.
But it's true, and I feel that's why it's so important for couples making a big decision like moving countries to educate themselves beforehand. If you haven't had an experience like of course you have to have the 100%, oh yeah, I'm
Mhm.
I'm in. I want to do this. I know it's going to be hard,
Yep.
but I'm in.
Yep.
There are things that you really need to be clear in
Yep.
advance. That the things that are just like, this is not going to ever affect me. And
Mhm.
I need to know that this is how we, the fundamental structure, I think, has to be there. And you have to be in
Right.
absolute agreement on that.
And I think if I'm talking about advice for what I would
Mhm,
advise for couples who are going to
mhm.
make a rotational move, if you are going on the lead assignment and your partner isn't, systematically set aside money
Mhm.
every single month for a budget that will be used for something that will help them have purpose and meaning. Like,
Great
right?
advice.
If you don't know what that is yet, or you have no idea, and all of a sudden there's 10,000 sitting
Mhm.
on that account, I don't care. You put it aside and you
Yes.
don't touch it.
Mhm,
Because when the kids start getting older
mhm.
and the exoticism weighs off, and or if you just need something more, you don't want money to
Yeah.
stop you, because it's going to be more expensive to get divorced or to have a repatriation or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like, that is one thing I would say that
Mhm.
couples should do,
That's amazing advice. Absolutely.
because you're already in a power dynamic, right?
Mhm.
I see
Yep.
it all the time also with potential clients. It's like, I
Mhm.
really want to do this, but I have to go ask my husband, right? And you're already feeling like in a weaker negotiation place.
Mhm.
And I had other client who was like, "Oh yeah, I have a budget for this," in their family. They agreed it. And it's like, "Yeah, I'm just going to go get it from the budget." And it's non-issue.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really important for
Yeah.
people.
Definitely. It's exactly that, the being prepared for the unknown,
Mhm.
because there's so
Yep.
many, there are going to be so many unknowns, and
Mhm.
unknowns in your relationship too.
Mhm.
The stress on a relationship when moving abroad is immense. But I think that's just great advice in any relationship. It's
Mhm.
as soon as there is that imbalance of, say,
Mhm.
financial power, or
Yep.
the decisions are leaning more towards one partner,
Mhm.
than
Yep.
to just be on equal ground. That, yeah, that's great. Love that. So let's go to some more lighthearted things. I want to dig into a little bit more into cultural differences. We talked a little bit about stereotypes and kind of that pretty American
Mhm.
tendency to be very job oriented, i.e.,
Yep.
very defined by what you do. So it's your job, your work is a huge part of your
Mhm.
identity. What other American things, typical American things, do you feel like have kind of dwindled away slightly?
Mhm.
And
Putting my dishes in the sink. We had this big fight in the beginning where I would put my dishes in the sink. And when he came and saw that, it was like, oh my God, the most offensive thing you can imagine that happened, right? And I was like, whoa, why are you freaking out? Because I have dishes in the sink. Where you wash dishes in the sink? Like, where else do you put them? Small Swiss kitchen, right? He's like, no, you have to take the dishes out of the sink before you can put the water in, and then you have to put them back in. So it's an extra step, right? It's not efficient. And I was like, but wait a minute. I grew up with two sinks, a double sink,
yeah.
right? And in our apartment, it was a single sink.
Mhm.
So I was just doing what I had done for a decade, 2 decades, right? And he freaked out about it. So that's a joke, but that was like a stupid thing of contention.
um, any other Americanisms, like funny, embarrassing incidents you can think of?
Oh, the way I physically cut cheese in our house, like with gruyere, it wasn't straight enough. It was too sloppy. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Right. And in the beginning, I'm like, Jesus, guy is so controlling, you know? But now I realize, like, it's systemisch, right? Like, this is
This is
there's so many like ways you do things, and the
Mhm.
Ordnung. I was like, oh, okay, this is cultural, right? So when my friend came to visit and she was
Mhm.
cutting the brie, but like in a really sloppy way, I was like, "Oh, she's so rude," you know? I got totally Swiftified. But things
That's
that
so funny.
changed, I have to say, there
Mhm.
was one thing that changed in me when I was in Switzerland
Mhm.
that I didn't like, that I'll be really curious if I let it go back when we go there again long
Mhm.
term. But I noticed in Switzerland, there was a tendency in a place that I worked, people would walk down the hall and they wouldn't like acknowledge that they saw each other until right when you got there. Then it would be like, it was like very serious, you know, and that's not, people know that about my personality. That's not who I am. But I really, the word that I always tried to use with my husband to share what I meant is I felt like I got squelched. Like I got smaller because my big self was not welcome. I got sanctioned when I was joyful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I can see that. And Germans are pretty similar, I think.
Right. And they'll judge you. Like, who is this loud? And then
why
of course,
does she
American,
smile? You know, what's wrong with her?
She's smiling, right? And because I'm American too, this is what's so interesting. Because I'm American, people think it's because of my nationality. Right. But I'm sorry, joyful and laughing is not a national characteristic. It is a personality trait, and it's not nationality. Not every American laughs like I do, right? Thank God.
Or smiles all the time. Yeah, it's very true.
Right. I mean, come on, there's 300 million people, shy, extrovert, etc. And so, but people see me and I fit the image. I'm the blonde, blue-eyed, smiley, laughing American woman. Right.
Yeah.
And that was hard because it was, what are my choices? I either reify or stereotype, and you probably think I'm stupid. Right. Because on the movies, happy blonde, blue-eyed women are stupid.
Oh my God. That's a whole other topic. We could take off on the what people perceive and
right. Or I squelch my personality and I'm not socially sanctioned, and I'm safe, right? So I can adapt, and I wanted to adapt, right? I wanted to adapt.
Yeah, but then you're suppressing who you are, and that's in the long term is not healthy at all.
But that was a choice I had to make. And, you know, and as an interculturalist, one of the definitions of intercultural competence is effective, appropriate, and satisfactory. So I had to be effective and it had to be appropriate, and they were satisfied, right? But how small do I have to get so that I'm not satisfied? Does that make sense? It's always that dilemma.
And then, well, and then you start resenting the culture that you're in, which does not help anyone.
And that's why when I went and got my master's degree, I told you that I had a love-hate relationship with Switzerland for the first 4.5 years. But when I got back, after I got my master's in intercultural communication, that love-hate stopped. I could see it so much more neutrally. It wasn't so personalized. Like I felt liberated because I could see it through a different lens. It was less judgmental. And I also just want to say my friends, my intimate Swiss friends, they appreciated that side of me. I had an intimate set of friends that allowed myself to be who I was. And maybe they thought they were getting the full me, but maybe they were only getting like 75%, but I also knew they probably couldn't handle the 100. But I did feel, I felt in my circle of intimate friends, it was no question. They welcomed me into their life.
Yeah, so that's you need. And to be honest, I think who really ever gets the full 100% anyway? Maybe your partner, right?
Yeah.
Well, they have to.
Unfortunately, the worst of me, right?
Yeah, but then you do too. So your partner, would you say you say his approach, and obviously then the postings and everything has influenced who you are and your business and everything so much. And his wisdom has come flowing into your work. But how is it the other way around? Do you think you've had, I mean, obviously you're going to have had an influence on him, but would you say
I would love to have him answer this question, but I think that, but we, based on the conversations we've had, we talked about like why he was originally interested in me. Right. And I think that I did represent something that was outside of the cultural context, right? That less, uncomplicated, a little bit freer with joy, a little bit more playful, fewer rules, right? Like, I am sure it gave a freer space for him right, to be in a relationship, because that's that he's a card, like he's super funny. We always joke that he's more American than I am, and I'm more Swiss than he is, on certain aspects. But so I think maybe because of I gave permission to break out of that box, right? That I do know from even my Swiss friends, they say they get tired of that box and wish people would break out of it, right? So I think that was an influence. Also being able to communicate fluently. His English was not very good when we first met. So now he's really amazing. He has really high language competencies, and unfortunately had to practice them with me.
Yeah.
And then I think he's also, been able to witness my family culture. Again, very different from his family culture, not better or worse, just different, right? And experience two ways of being. And then we together, we decide, like, what do we bring in from his family and his culture?
Of course, in your
right?
own family with your children. And
Yep.
that's
I just give him so much credit for having that flexibility too, because neither one of us had models on how to do this.
No.
Very
true. Yeah. But that's the beauty of a cross-cultural relationship. I think it's just you create something unique.
Yep. And I said in the beginning that I attributed too much to culture, and we have to be careful about that. But I have to say it was probably a really amazing saving grace, because anytime there was a misunderstanding or a conflict, I automatically assumed, and he too, that it was cultural and not personal. So then we didn't take it personally. Like we came from a place of resolution and understanding, and maybe we just grabbed culture to explain it, right?
Well, yes, because it's the easiest, almost makes sense.
Right. But it also gave us a place for less confrontation. It was a more open, non-judgmental, empathetic place to work out those things. And I mean, now that I'm 40, how am I 44? With hindsight, 22, that was half my life ago. And I thought I was an adult then. I thought I had wisdom then. But, right? But in hindsight, like, geez, just a baby girl. I was just a baby girl trying to figure it out, trying to have a relationship, trying to do life, right? So I give her a lot of credit for the work that she did do, right? Even though in hindsight, I see how much I've learned. I couldn't have started at any other point.
No. Sometimes I wonder how, and you probably have these moments too, where you're like, would I do what I did now, knowing what I know? I mean, these are all these hypothetical questions where you think, I'm so glad I was so young when I made those decisions. Exactly, because I don't think, who'd put themselves through all this.
Right. If I saw a laundry list of it neutrally, I probably would have been scared. But if I were to see a glimpse of my life now, I'd be like, I'm all in.
Yeah, that's so true. But it's also a very, very nice thing to be able to say.
Yeah,
I think. Is.
And that's a blessing. I also just want to say, for people who are listening who haven't had a successful intercultural relationship, that they need to give themselves some grace, right? Because it's hard enough to be with yourself all day.
Yeah.
Then trying to have a relationship with someone else. That relationships, fall apart for a lot of reasons. People grow in different directions, right? So there's zero judgment. I just wanted to say that because, sometimes I have clients who had an intercultural relationship and end up leaving their partner, and there's just no judgment there because
and absolutely.
And maybe a piece of advice that for anybody who is newly involved with someone from another culture or country is that don't hesitate to get support from other binational couples or from professionals. Doesn't have to be a marriage counselor. It could be an interculturalist. It could be a coach, but someone who gets it. Or someone who is in a binational relationship like you, but a healthy, happy one, right? Not one danger I've seen with binational couples is that all the unhappy who knows what's, like name insert culture, get together and they talk about the other culture, and that's really destructive.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean?
Yes, that is such a good point. Being very careful with making finding the difference between what's actually cultural and what's character.
It's so weird. I was trying to think about that before. One, because I've lived outside of the US more than like as an adult.
What is this? I'm hitting that point. I'm hitting that halfway point as well. And I was about the same age as you were when I left Germany. And I feel people ask me about Germans and what's so German. And I'm like, I don't know.
The last time I lived in the US, they had flip phones and Clinton was in office. Like, I don't know. Right. And when people ask me to do intercultural training, I will do Swiss stuff before I'll do American stuff because I don't know as much as I do. And the other thing is, and because we've been together for 20 years, it's not about our national differences anymore. It's more about it's also because we've grown together.
Yeah. And obviously there are some cultural things that he's absorbed that you've absorbed about each other and the culture that comes automatically with the person. But at the end of the day, it's any relationship changes.
It's not any, if we were to have any conflict, it has nothing to do with American versus Swiss. It's just that's not part of the thing. And being abroad has been really cool with him being abroad because it used to be, I'm the one who's lived abroad and you don't know. And now it's like, oh, now you know, because you've been abroad for 7 years. I've been abroad for 21 years. Who's counting? But like now he knows what it feels like to miss people. He's lost people. He's missed events. So he gets it in his bones. And I don't like that he's had to hurt that way or feel those things, but I also appreciate that he gets it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's round off our conversation. I always do this at the end. If I asked your partner now, if you weren't there, what would he say is the most Swiss thing about you? And you kind of said you almost more Swiss than he is now.
Maybe it's around my time orientation. I'm very much like a Swiss train when it comes to taking off. Like, let's go at 2:00. And in the morning when I want my kids to get ready for the bus, I'm like 7 minutes until the bus is here. I'm like 13 minutes until. So, and he's a little bit more, laid back about it. And I'm the drill sergeant. But that probably also comes from my solo parenting experience where I knew if I didn't have this machine run, right, I wouldn't get them on track. So it could be from that, but maybe my time orientation.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. It's been really wonderful talking to you, Sundae.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, it's especially fun because that's what we worked on together was a podcast. So it's like a fun little celebration.
Absolutely. Very much. Very much.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. You take care.
All right, darling. Take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Cheers.
So that was my conversation with Sundae. She is always so much fun to talk to. And I think it's pretty obvious that she has a wealth of experience and wisdom and stories to share. So yes, check out her website and of course her podcast, Expat Happy Hour, and you'll find so much more. All the links are in the show notes, including a link to her love letter every international couple needs to read. That's it from me for today. Stay safe out there. Look after yourself and the people you love. Or as Sundae would say, in fact, this is one of my favorite Sundaeisms, love the crap out of your people. See you next time.